You know, you can always say times have changed. You can't, do this, you can't do that. But, where I'm from in Alabama, how I was raised, it's the same thing, man. And growing up, that was nothing, man. My mom, she always wept me up and things like that, man. Just in my culture, that's how I was raised, man. And that's how my mom, she raised her kids. And, like I said, man, look at me now. I'm in the NFL and I'm doing great.
Okay, so that is a teammate of Minnesota Vikings, Adrian Peterson. He is arrested on child abuse charges, and it brought up the issue of corporal punishment. It brought it front and center. Everyone can agree that domestic violence against your spouse, like the Ray Rice case, is wrong, but in the case of disciplining your kids, opinions not so clear-cut. Should parents spank their kids? And when does spanking cross the line and become abuse? All good questions for our guests today. I'm joined by Shanae Hall. She is a former NFL wife and author of the book, Why Do I Have to Think Like a Man? Deneen Milner, she is a contributing editor for a parenting magazine and founder of the website My Brown Baby. And Erik Fisher is a licensed psychologist and author of The Art of Empowered Parenting. Thank you all so much for being with me. And Shanae, I want to begin with you because you do believe spanking is a part of discipline and a part of rearing children and an important part of it. But I want to talk about specifically the Adrian Peterson case because I saw the pictures that had been out there that have since been withdrawn that to me show a very different image of disciplining a kid. It's not a red bottom, which we don't have to agree or disagree on whether or not we should do that.
Right.
They are cuts on legs, multiple, that a grand jury looked at and said that is felony abuse. Can we separate the difference between abuse and spanking? How do you know that gray line, and why do you think it's okay?
First, when I separate the difference between spanking and abuse, when I think of abuse, I think of something that's reoccurring every day. I think of something that is petty things that you're getting the ultimate penalty of a switch for. I know as a child I got hit with a switch one time, and it's because I left my house. I think I was 10, and I went to the store without getting approval first. And now that I look at it at 34 years old, I'm like, I get it, because if something would have happened, no one would have known, and I just would have been missing. So for me, it only took once, and I got the point. So I think it depends on what you do. I do think there's levels to discipline. There are a time for timeout. There's a time for a spanking, or it's a quick pat on the hand, and there is I would never grab a switch because I don't have that kind of energy, but I'll grab a belt if it's warranted.
Erik, why do you think people are okay with that with children, but this conversation I have a feeling would be very different if Adrian Peterson hit his wife with a switch, for example?
Right.
Why is it different? That's the thing. Yeah, of course, but it's a defenseless child that has no choice of leaving. Why is it a different conversation?
I think it's because we feel that because they're our kids, in ways we treat our kids almost like they're our possessions. And they're not. To me, our kids are a gift to us. They're not a responsibility. It is our responsibility to raise our kids, but when we see things from a standpoint that I'm the boss, I am in charge, and I'm supposed to teach you, it brings up more of a fear-based component. I also believe that one time can be abuse, not just multiple times of a behavior. It can be one time you get treated a certain way. That might have been the only time he spanked his child, but that was extreme. And I don't believe that using physical consequences should be an option, because there's so many other ways to teach your child, and you want to teach your child respect that comes from a love-based place, not a fear-based place. That takes longer, it takes patience, it takes time, and it takes perseverance to do that.
And I want to get to you about some of the alternatives to spanking, but first, Deneen, you took a little issue with something that Charles Barkley had to say about spanking. I want to play it for you and get your take on the other end.
I'm from the South. Whipping is, we do that all the time. Every black parent in the South is going to be in jail under those circumstances.
So here's the thing, okay? Because it happened to you or to him or to anyone else, it makes it okay in that argument. Deneen,
Right.
What do you think?
And I say very simply, evolve. Yes. There were parents who used to beat their children, hit them with switches. I'm very familiar with the concept. But you evolve, just like we no longer let children ride in the front seat without a seatbelt, just like we no longer smoke around people, and we understand that secondhand smoke is bad for all the people around you. We also need to evolve in the idea of how we discipline our children. I don't hit my kids, and I've never had a need to. I'm smarter than them. My husband and I had a very big conversation about it before we decided to be parents. How will we walk forward as parents and teach our children how to have good character, how to respect us, how to follow rules? And we are the smarter beings here. So teaching them how to do that without hitting is possible.
All such really interesting points, and we want to give you guys some alternatives to spankings if you're curious. Do timeouts really work with kids? We're going to ask our panel right after this break. While the NFL is dealing with a domestic violence controversy, the Washington Post points out that it's not just a football or maybe even a male problem. Hope Solo is playing for the U.S. national women's soccer team despite the fact that she's accused of punching her sister and nephew. Solo faces trial in November. Interesting point there. So let's get back to our discussion about spanking with our panel. We have Shanae Hall, former NFL wife, blogger Deneen Milner, and licensed psychologist Erik Fisher. It's interesting because we talk about breaking the cycle of violence when it comes to domestic abuse. We do. Usually, if you're an abuser, you were abused. Right. We talk about breaking that cycle of violence, yet we don't have that conversation when it comes to, well, I was hit with a switch and my legs were cut up, or I was smacked across the face and look, I turned out okay.
You know, because I think it's not a one-size-fits-all. That's, I mean, chaotic to think that I have 3 different kids and my kids are in high school, middle school, and elementary school. Each one is different. My son may get a spanking maybe he's gotten a spanking twice in his life because his feelings are hurt if I say something or if my tone changes. He feels like he disappointed me. He doesn't need that. My middle child probably maybe once or twice, and it was for like tearing up some furniture or something like that. So you can't say, as a collective United States society, we look at kids who do horrible things every single day, and the first thing we say is, where were these people's parents at? What are you saying, that they should have put them on timeout for 15 minutes 3 times a day, and that would have helped change the kid that stomped out the person leaving Kroger, or the child that decided he was going to set his house on fire with his grandparents in there? Like, different people require different things. That is why the law says, okay, this is a warning, this is a probation, this is jail time, this is the death penalty. There's levels to it because there are different things that people do, and as a parent, it is my job to instill a level of fear and respect, and more so than anything, love. What comes from that is love. I mean, the Bible quotes that you should spare the rod, spare the child. It's like you have to step forward and say, you will respect authority, you will respect me, and if you can give your child in particular a hug and a kiss on the forehead when they tear up whatever or don't do it.
I'm consistently amused by the idea that because I say I don't spank my children,
I'm not saying
that timeout is the only thing that we do. There are so many different. There are so
you hear that from a lot.
You hear that from people who do not agree that spanking is not the way to do it. Right. I can sit here and run down a list of things that have my kids understanding that their mother does not play, and I don't have to raise my hands at them to do that.
Right. There's a society of people
the jail is full of people who were beaten. Full of them.
And that's one thing.
Full of them.
Without balance
of love. So this is something that's always interested me. Why do we say it's okay to use violence as a punishment and expect violence to not be something they then later use themselves?
Exactly.
It is a learned thing.
So you teach your kids to have power over people rather than power with people, and that's a lot of the problem in our culture.
And there are people sitting at home that may start to agree with you and say, okay, if I'm not going to spank my kids, what are some alternatives that maybe aren't the timeout? Because that's not realistic.
Well, I think, again, timeouts are realistic because I did with my daughter. We did timeouts in the store. We did timeouts in restaurants. She knew that if there was the basic thing is that the consequences have to be immediate. They have to be to the level at which the offense was to some degree, and you want them to be consistent. So a timeout anywhere you go, if you let them know in the mall, we can do a timeout here, we can do a timeout here. They know they're on notice and that they have to behave with respect. Response costs: if they break something, they have to replace that, and then some. If they dirty something, they have to, clean. Maybe they're cleaning the baseboards or whatever like that, or picking up sticks in the yard. If they break somebody else's stuff, they have to pay for it and return it. That's teaching responsibility for behaviors.
Right. Parenting is much more complex than just one action. That it's a much greater, series of behaviors that develop over time and balancing acts. And I think that each point of view has been represented strongly, and for people to make their decisions. And we thank you guys for coming on, Shanae, Deneen, and Erik.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.